ang ipopresent is conflict between Philippine Military Forces and CPP-NPA. So my objective for this afternoon is first to define CPP-NPA. Second, to provide a brief background or overview about the CPP-NPA. Third is to identify the primary goal of CPP-NPA. Then fourth is to learn about what is EO70 and its principle and policies. Then lastly, to present the result, findings, conclusion, and recommendation. So first is what is CPP-NPA stands for. So ito yung the Communist Party of the Philippines dash New People's Army. So brief overview, CPP-NPA is formed on December 26, 1968. So ang liderato nito ay si Jose Maria Sison. Si Jose Maria Sison is una siyang nag-serve sa NDF's chief political consultant. He founded CPP with Bernabe Buscaino, which is galing sa NPA. So ano na ang status ng group ngayon? The status is active pa rin po, no? At kasalukuyan nakita rin po natin sa mga balita, pati na sa mga speech ni Pangulong Duterte na lagi niyang sinasama yung tinatawag niyang leftist ngayon. So kailan po nagsimula yung first attack ng CPP-NPA? So as recorded po is nung August 21, 1971, 3 members of the Communist Party of the Philippines New People Army threw 4 na granada yung tinapon nila on the stage of Liberal Party rally in Manila's Plaza Miranda. So ito yung time pa ni Ferdinand Marcos. So ang ano pa nito is si Ferdinand Marcos daw ang na-blame sa attacking yon. So 9 was killed and 95 wounded. Then last attack nila is bago lang noong April 19, 2020. So at least 7 soldiers ang namatay and 11 ang wounded. So 3 doon yung mga young officials ng Himalayan City, Negros Occidental. So let's proceed to my introduction. So while the national government has been giving cash assistance and local government units or LGUs are distributing relief goods during the pandemic crisis brought by COVID-19, and thousands of families, overseas Filipino workers and seafarers have lost their job and can no longer provide for their families. Additional to this fear of COVID-19 is threat posed by the CPP-NPA today, which will affect the peace and order inside the country. So, ano naman natin, napansin natin na nung pagsabog pa lang ng pandemic na ito, na crisis na ito, is kasabay din dito yung mga balita about the CPP-NPA. So, ito rin yung rason kung bakit pinili ko tong topic na to, because this is really acknowledged as a problem na ang Philippine government is facing nowadays. And even President Rodrigo Duterte, lagi niya na-mention sa mga speech na itong mga CPP-NPA or what he called lefties. So, ano ba ang primary goal ng CPP-NPA? So, the CPP-NPA primary goal is to overthrow the Philippine government in favor of the New People's Democratic State. And it is said that the CPP-NPA are just buying time by deceiving the government in entering into peace talks, while their main purpose is to mobilize their forces in preparation for people's war, or to overthrow the duly constituted authorities, seizing control of the government and imposing a totalitarian regime. So di natin alam kung totoo ba ito or ano, but this is a news article published by the PNA or the Philippine News Agency. Then next, the government has taken important step in confronting long drawn out issues brought about by the 50-year existence of the Communist Party in the Philippines. So 50 years na daw po ang CPP-NPA. For decades, the communist terrorists have been fighting a Maoist concept guerrilla warfare, the primary aim of overthrowing the government. Through the years, new alliances are developed with strategies adapting to changes of the times, including political overtone and advances in multimedia and digital technology. Several so-called development and community organizations have since joined the bandwagon with emerging leaders coming out of campuses and local communities, all believing in a communist revolution as means of pursuing change and economic equality based on the dogma of an all-knowing, all-wise regime. This has been protracted and continuous effort of promoting their objective through mass mobilization, military engagement, subversive political action, and international solidarity or ISW with several others organization. So, sabi dito, habang tumatagal na nade-develop ang mga bagong strategies ng CPP, NPA at palaki na ang bilang nila, mas pinalawak pa nila ang pag-promote ng kanilang objective through one, mass mobilization, military engagement, sub, subversive political action, and international solidarity. Work with ISW. So ano tong ISW? Ang ISW po is ito po yung ang aim nila is mag-fight for the recognition and respect of all our inherent rights and as indigenous people to land, life, and self-determination. So, sila po yung nagsa-stand or parang advocate sila ng right of indigenous people. So, nabahala ngayon ang gobyerno natin. So, anong ginawa ng ating pamalahan? So, President Duterte issued Executive Order number 70 in December 2018, establishing a whole-of-nation approach in ending local communist armed conflict through a creation of National Task Force or NTF that will take lead in institutionalizing a national peace framework as a matter of state principle and policy as mandated by the Constitution. The government shall maintain peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, and property, and promote the general welfare. Consistent with the objective of the Philippine Development Plan for 2022, the attainment of inclusive, sustainable peace through peace-building initiatives is optimal in the presidential directive. So ano yung directive? Ito na yung EO 70 or Executive Order 70. The whole of nation approach as directed by the President is essential for this peace framework to become workable, effective, and beneficial. So, tukuyin natin kung anong meron sa EO 70. So, ito po yung EO 70. Ayan po yung laman ng EO 70. Executive Order number 70 is institutionalizing the whole of nation approach in attaining inclusive and sustainable peace, creating a national task force to end local communist armed conflict, and directing the adoption of national peace framework. Whereas Article number 2 of the 1987 Constitution provides for the following statement principles. So ito yung tatlong principles. First is the Philippine renounces war as an instrument of national policy. Second, the maintenance of peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, so na-mention ko na kanina. Third, the state shall promote a just and dynamic social order that will ensure the prosperity and independence of the nation. So, hindi natin ito tutukuyin lahat kasi masyado pong mahaba. Mag-focus na lang po tayo sa Section 1 to 5. Section 1 po nasa pinakadulo. Nakita niyo po ba? Section 1. Institutionalizing a whole-of-nation approach. The whole-of-nation approach is hereby institutionalized the government policy for the attainment of inclusive and sustainable peace. Towards the end, the government shall prioritize and harmonize the delivery of basic services and social development packages in the conflict-affected areas or vulnerable communities, facilitates societal inclusively, and ensure active participation of all sectors of society in the pursuit of the country peace agenda. So, sabi dito, the whole of nation approach daw is yun na yung pagkaroon ng institutionalized government para ma-attain daw yung sustainable peace. So paano ito inaano? So yun na yung pag-provide ng mga basic needs ng ating community, then pagbibigay ng mga social development packages during the conflict. Section 2, creation of the National Task Force to end local communities' armed conflict, to ensure the efficient and effective implementation of the whole of nation approach. A national task force to end local communities' armed conflict is hereby created under the office of the President. So, gagawa ng task force. Then, the section 3, ito yung composition ng ating task force. So, the members are the following. Lahat ng secretary from the DILG, DOJ, National Defense, PWH, DBM, Finance, SADAR, PSWD, Education, then Director General ng National Economic Development Authority, Director General ng National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, Director General ng Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, Presidential Advisors of Peace Process, Presidential Advisor for Indigenous People, Chief of Staff ng AFP, Director General ng PNP, Chairperson ng NCIP, then Secretary Presidential ng Communication Operation Office. Then dalawang representative from the private sector. So dito sa private sector, ang pwede lang nilang i-appoint is yung may rank na not lower than Assistant Secretary. Section 4, powers and functions. So ito yung dapat na ma-observe ng ating task force. So letter A is within 6 months from the issuance of the order, formulate and start to implement in coordination with the relevant national government agencies, LGUs, the civil society and other stakeholders, a whole nation approach-driven national policy framework. Number 2, ensure interagency convergence in the implementation of the framework in conflict-affected and vulnerable communities. Then enlist the assistance of any department, bureau, etc. Ensure best policies. Sorry. Evaluate, define, modify, or integrate policies, programs, and activities contained in the framework. Organize interagency, multi-sectoral clusters, councils, committees, and groups in national, regional, and local levels, or modify existing ones whenever necessary to fulfill its mandate. F. Develop strategic communication, advocacy, peace plans in case of ceasefire, as well as capacity building measures to enable local chief executives and local peace bodies to engage and facilitate local peace engagement or negotiations and interventions. Review the mandates and functions of offices undertaking peace efforts to avoid duplication of functions and programs, and submit its recommendations to the President for approval. As may be necessary, issue supplemental guidelines, protocol, policies in the furtherance of this order. Recommend to the Office of the President shall advisor on the peace process project, perform such other duties function as the President may direct. So, as a summary po, ang primary goal naman ng EO70 is yung approach po is manggagaling sa ating barangay levels pataas. Kumbaga, ito yung tinatawag na multi-pronged approach, or hindi lang po yung AFP pati PNP natin ang gagalaw during the crisis or during the armed conflict. Kasama na rin po dito magpa-plan yung ating barangay levels, paakyat. So the result, findings, sa slide na ito, present ko yung mga result or outcomes or mga nangyari sa pag-implement nitong EO70. So noong December 23, 2019, hamidan ng Camp Peralta Capiz, he said the institutionalization of the whole of nation approach through the creation of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-LCOC, is continuously gaining and winning against the CPP, NPA terrorists in the Central and Western Visayas. Then, si Brigadier General Eric Vinoya naman, ang commander ng Army 3rd Infantry Division, ang sabi niya is the Party of the Philippines New People's Army is badly hurt. Nasaktan daw ang CPP-NPA. Is badly hurt of the significant result of the EO-70. Hence, they are now desperately building a fountain of lies and fabricating stories to destroy the people's drive against insurgency. Added pa ni Benoya, EO-70 aims to achieve genuine peace. Discrediting EO-70 is like rejecting peace. Their attack without concrete basis to the government's sincere strategy is an insult to the intellect of peace-loving Visayans. Source is ID DPAW Philippine Army. Another is continuation of the findings and result. Sabi ulit ni Benoya, with EO-70, government agencies are converging their efforts towards delivering the most needed services to eradicate social issues that the communist groups are capitalizing. Likewise, offering the CPP-NPA terrorists a new peaceful life is part of this consolidated effort. But it is them who maliciously and continuously rejecting peace and development. They are now showing their identity as true enemy of peace and progress. So one of the most significant results of the EO-70 is the creation of task forces to end local communist armed conflict, the NTF, LCAC, by the different local government units in Central and Western Visayas, which also led to the declaration of the CPP-NPA as persona non grata. Persona non grata means person not appreciated or prohibited by the government. Another is during the AFP change of command ceremony on January 4, Lieutenant General Felimon Santos said, unlike the past, when the local chief executive left the insurgency problem solely to the AFP and the Philippine National Army to deal with, EO involves all the government agencies from the national to barangay level with delineate roles and responsibility in the whole of nation approach. So ito na yung sinasabi ko, kasali na yung barangay pataas na level ang approach nung during the armed conflict. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Continue,
Ay,
ma'am.
kala ko wala na kayo. Conclusions and recommendations. With EO, so ito yung mga conclusions, recommendations na bigay ko. With EO-70's creation of National Task Force to End Local Communists or NTF-LCAP, government agencies and their corresponding units at all levels could cooperate, interact, support, provide practical solutions, and solve problems and issues on the ground that are being exploited by these communist terrorists in order to stir up our countrymen to fight against our government through the armed struggle, which is highly commendable strategy by our government. So, nagandahan na itong EO-70, hindi lang po AFP and PNP ang lumalaban. Kasama na po natin ang lahat ng government sector mula barangay level pataas. Number 2, this multi-pronged approach addresses the motivation for insurgency and will hopefully put an end to its treacherous life cycle. So, meaning, madami pa ang makakasama ng AFP and PNP sa pagsugpo ng gulong. So, sana po masustain and ma-maintain. Next is good governance practices and the efficient delivery of basic services for their constituents create resilient communities that thwart the return of the communist terrorist groups in their respective provinces city. So, kapag maayos ang pamamahala at natatanggap ng sambayanan ang serbisyo na nararapat sa kanila, baka wala na pong rebelde o gulo sa pagitan ng gobyerno at mga grupong ito. Yun lang, depende rin po kasi minsan naabuso po ng mga mamamayan yung mga services na binibigay sa kanila. Four is the AFP can now focus its resources, manpower, and firepower on the remaining communists who persist with armed struggles despite the government's goodwill through cash assistance, livelihood training, and housing. So, madami pa pong role ang AFP sa bansa natin. So, dahil sa Executive Order 17 na to, um, mas madami pa pong ma-accomplish ang ating AFP and PNP, hindi lang po sa side ng war, kundi sa iba pa. Vigilance support and cooperation in the local populace are needed in order to suppress and prevent any further, any further, any future terroristic plans from occurring and avoiding the unnecessary loss of human lives and damaged property. So, sabi dito, ang tulong at kooperasyon ng mamamayan ay kailangan para maiwasan ang mga gulo at pagkawala pa ng maraming buhay at mga sundalo. So, agree po ako doon. Then, the AFP should always be battle ready to counteract any threat that confronts our desire for peace. So, hindi po porket nakita ng government na successful na tong EO70 ay dapat makampante na tayo. So, dapat ready pa rin po yung ating AFP and PNP. Kasi, di ba alam naman natin na itong si PNPA matatalino to eh. So, malay natin, talagang tsumitsyempo lang sila. So, that would be the end of my report. Thank you
Thank
po
you,
and
ma'am.
masalam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Diyan pa si Sir Puno. Si Sir Puno. Yes. Ma'am, pag-stop presenting lang. Kita pang screen mo. Si Sir Puno. Sir Puno ka na, Charlotte na?
Mabilis lang ako nag-report. Mabilis good. Ano lang, di na 20 minutes. Yung kanina kababa.
Sir,